The studio lights flared. The applause sign flickered above the audience. Cameras rolled as the smooth jazz intro faded, and Bill Maher leaned forward in his chair, ready to stir the pot once again. It was supposed to be a sharp, fast-paced episode of Real Time. Bill had invited Denzel Washington for a conversation on celebrity activism and political responsibility, knowing full well Denzel's reputation for not mincing words. But tonight, Maher had other plans. He wanted to press him. Challenge him. Maybe even catch him off guard. Denzel sat across from him, cool in a dark navy suit, expression unreadable. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. This wasn't a usual guest. This was Denzel Washington. Maher smirked. "You know, Denzel," he said, tilting his head mockingly, "I've heard a lot of actors talk about politics. Most of them sound like they read Twitter more than history books." The audience gave a polite laugh. But Denzel didn't even blink. "So," Maher continued, "do you really think Hollywood should be leading conversations about democracy, or are we all just watching rich people argue about things they don't live?" The smile lingered on Maher's face. Denzel's didn't. He leaned in slightly. "You want to know what I think," he said slowly, his voice calm but carrying a weight that silenced the back row murmurs. The crowd hushed. Bill blinked, sensing something shifting. Denzel folded his hands, elbows resting gently on the armrests. His voice was low and deliberate, measured, but with the unmistakable force of someone who'd been underestimated one too many times. "See, Bill," he began, "the problem isn't actors talking about democracy. The problem is folks who think fame disqualifies someone from caring about their country." Maher gave a half-smile, preparing to interrupt, but Denzel didn't let him. "You act like living in Hollywood means we stop being citizens. Like success means we don't have roots. You don't know where I came from. You don't know what I've seen." The room grew still. Even the band in the back stopped shuffling. Denzel's eyes were locked on Maher now, not hostile, just surgical. "I've been to neighborhoods that policy forgot. I've talked to mothers who bury sons because of bad laws written in nice offices. And I don't need permission from a late-night host to give a damn about that." A few quiet gasps whispered through the audience. Maher, usually quick with a comeback, opened his mouth, then shut it. For a beat too long, he looked like someone caught under the wrong kind of spotlight. "So let me ask you something, Bill," Denzel said, tilting his head just slightly. "When was the last time you talked to someone whose life was broken by the politics you joke about?" The silence was deafening. Bill Maher shifted in his seat. His trademark smirk had faded, replaced with something less confident, something uncertain. "Well, I mean, I've had plenty of people on this show who've lived through." Denzel raised a hand slightly. "Not rude. Just final." "No, no. Not on the show, Bill. I mean outside the green room. Without a camera rolling. When there's no applause waiting for the gotcha line." The crowd stayed frozen. This wasn't the typical back-and-forth sparring match Maher was used to. This was something heavier, rooted. Real. Denzel continued. "I didn't come here to win an argument. I came here because I'm tired of watching people laugh at pain they've never had to feel. It's easy to sit in a chair and act clever when you've never had to ask a cop if your son's going to live." His words hit like cold steel. "You make a living off sarcasm," Denzel added, voice unwavering. "But some of us make our lives trying to stop cycles that don't care if you're funny." A low murmur rose from the crowd, part disbelief, part admiration. People weren't sure if they were watching a talk show or a reckoning. Maher looked at the teleprompter, then back to Denzel. No joke came to his lips. No comeback. For the first time in years, Bill Maher had nothing to say. Bill Maher inhaled sharply, leaning back in his chair, visibly thrown. His eyes darted toward the control room, then back to Denzel, as if hoping someone might cut to commercial. But the cameras were still rolling. The silence in the room was too thick to slice through with humor now. "Okay," Maher finally muttered, forcing a smile, "so what, you think I should stop making jokes about politics?" Denzel didn't flinch. "No," he replied plainly. "I think you should understand the weight of the things you joke about. And who carries that weight after the laughter fades?" The audience was silent, leaning forward, breath held. "Your platform reaches millions," Denzel said. "So when you downplay struggle for a laugh, you're not punching up. You're looking down. And you don't even see it." Bill blinked. The smirk was gone. The crowd was still. Denzel straightened slightly in his chair, his voice steady and firm. "You asked if people like me should talk about democracy. I think people like you should start listening to it." And with that, Denzel sat back, calm as ever, hands resting on his lap. For a full 5 seconds, no one spoke. Not Maher. Not the crew. Not the crowd. Then someone clapped. Just one person at first. Then another. And another. Until the entire room was standing. Not cheering. Not yelling. Just standing, silent, awestruck, and still. The standing ovation wasn't loud. It wasn't the usual, hyped-up reaction TV producers begged for. It was reverent, like a courtroom just heard a verdict no one expected but everyone felt was right. Bill Maher sat frozen, fingers tapping nervously on his note cards. His eyes searched the audience, maybe looking for a laugh, an ally, anything to reclaim the moment. But it was gone. Denzel didn't gloat. He didn't nod or smile or soak it in. He just looked at Bill the same way he had from the start, calm, clear, unshaken. "We don't need more noise," Denzel said quietly, more to the room now than to Maher. "We need more accountability. And less ego." The audience didn't sit back down. Some looked stunned. Others emotional. A few had tears in their eyes, maybe from personal recognition, maybe from watching someone say what they never could. Bill finally cleared his throat. "Well, we'll be right back," he stammered, glancing at the crew. But the damage, or clarity, was done. And no commercial break could scrub it clean. As the screen faded to black, social media lit up like wildfire. Clips of the exchange spread within minutes. No hashtags, no trending campaign, just the raw footage of a man calmly dismantling a platform built on dismissiveness. By the time the show returned from break, the internet had already decided, Denzel didn't just win the moment. He redefined it. Back from commercial, the studio felt off. Not chaotic. Just subdued, like a thunderstorm had passed but left the air too heavy to breathe normally again. Bill Maher's tone had shifted. He smiled stiffly, thanked Denzel for sharing his thoughts, and quickly moved to the next segment. But everyone could feel it, he was rattled. There was no rhythm left in his delivery. His usual sarcasm felt hollow. Denzel remained composed, nodding politely, but no longer engaging. He knew what had just happened. Everyone did. Within hours, headlines exploded. Denzel Washington stops Maher cold on live TV. The moment Bill Maher realized he wasn't the smartest person in the room, Denzel Washington didn't raise his voice, but he raised the bar. Clips circulated on every major platform. Celebrities, activists, and even quiet observers reposted the moment. Some praised Denzel for his grace under pressure. Others thanked him for saying what needed to be said, without performance, without anger, just truth. Bill Maher stayed silent for 2 days. When he finally addressed the moment on Twitter, his post was brief: "I've always believed in free speech. Sometimes, it speaks back." But Denzel never responded. He didn't need to. The next week, something unexpected happened. Universities began replaying the clip in media ethics classes. Professors called it a modern masterclass in poise, power, and restraint. News anchors referenced it without irony. Panelists on rival shows, some who had once criticized Denzel for being too quiet in politics, now praised his words as a mic drop without the need for a mic. Even longtime critics of celebrity activism had to admit, this wasn't virtue signaling. It was clarity under fire. On podcasts and radio shows across the country, callers chimed in, "That wasn't just about Bill Maher," one man said on a national call-in show. "That was about all of us who make jokes and forget there are lives behind every punchline." "I'm not even a Denzel fan," one woman tweeted, "but I stood up in my living room like I was in church." Meanwhile, invitations poured into Denzel's team, from CNN, MSNBC, The Daily Show, even 60 Minutes. But he turned all of them down. He wasn't chasing the moment. He had made his point. And he didn't need to explain it again. Instead, he appeared days later, quietly and without warning, at a youth center in Newark, New Jersey. No press. No entourage. Just him and a group of teens in a circle of folding chairs. "Talk about what matters," he told them. "Even if they try to laugh you out of it. Especially then." They listened, closer than they had to any guest before. Behind the scenes, Bill Maher's production team was in damage control mode. Emails leaked showing debates about whether to reframe the episode before uploading the full replay online. One executive allegedly suggested editing out parts of Denzel's segment to make Maher appear more in control. But it was too late. The uncut clips had already gone viral. Millions had seen them. Repackaging the moment wouldn't erase its impact. And the impact was undeniable. Think pieces flooded opinion pages, The Atlantic, New York Times, even the Wall Street Journal. Why Denzel's silence was louder than Maher's microphone. A culture of cleverness just met its reckoning. When calm became the most radical response, the conversation began to change, not just around Maher, but around how media hosts framed political pain as content. There was a growing awareness that satire, while powerful, could easily become a shield for deflection. For once, the public didn't move on in a day. Denzel, still silent on the issue, became the center of something he didn't seek, an awakening. Not trending. Not sensational. Just, real. And yet, amidst all the noise, one quote from the exchange kept resurfacing, etched into comment sections, memes, and murals on urban walls: "We don't need more noise. We need more accountability. And less ego." It had become more than a moment. It was a mirror. Inside Hollywood, the ripple effects were even more profound than the public realized. Writers' rooms, producers, and public figures began having real conversations, off camera, about responsibility, tone, and the difference between performance and truth. A few prominent late-night hosts quietly revised upcoming monologues. One even scrapped a planned sketch poking fun at community organizers. For the first time in a long while, a celebrity moment hadn't triggered mockery or memes, it had triggered reflection. And for Bill Maher, his next episode opened differently. No monologue. No snarky headlines. Instead, he sat alone on stage for a moment longer than usual, looking almost human. When he finally spoke, his voice carried less swagger and more weight. "Last week, something unexpected happened," he said. "And I've had some time to think about it." He paused, letting the room stay still. "I didn't agree with everything Denzel said, but I heard it. All of it." Some of the audience clapped cautiously. "I built this show on provocation. On challenging norms. And sometimes, the one who needs challenging is me." There was no grand apology. No rebranding speech. But for once, Bill Maher didn't hide behind the joke. And that, in itself, was a first. Weeks passed, but the echo didn't fade. Clips of the exchange were still being shared, not because it was viral, but because it had become timeless. It wasn't just a celebrity clapback. It was a reset. A recalibration of how we listen, how we speak, and how we value the quiet strength behind a clear truth. Denzel Washington never commented on the moment again. No interviews. No retrospectives. When asked in a rare red carpet appearance about the exchange, he simply said, "I said what needed to be said. That's all." He then shifted the focus to the nonprofit he was there to support, and moved on. But others didn't. At high schools and college graduations across the country, valedictorians quoted him. Podcasts opened with clips from that night. Murals popped up in cities like Detroit, Atlanta, and Oakland, each featuring a different quote from that single interview. And on studio lots, inside green rooms, and behind political podiums, something began to stick, the realization that not every battle is won with volume. Some are won with presence. With clarity. With knowing who you are when the lights are brightest and the room is against you. Denzel hadn't destroyed Bill Maher. He had revealed him. And in doing so, reminded a nation, you don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to speak the truth, and mean it. Months later, the media cycle had moved on, new controversies, fresh sound bites, louder voices. But that moment between Denzel and Maher still lingered in the corners of public memory like a quiet thunder. Not loud, but impossible to ignore. At a town hall in Chicago, a young man stood up during a Q&A with a city council candidate and asked, "Do you hear us, or are you just waiting to talk?" The room fell silent. He didn't credit the quote, but anyone who had seen the Maher moment knew exactly where that tone came from. In Los Angeles, a group of college students organized an event called Less Ego. More listening. It wasn't political. It wasn't even about Denzel. It was about what that moment had awakened, a need for conversations that weren't performances. Meanwhile, Bill Maher carried on, but noticeably changed. Not neutered. Just, slower to speak. A little less smug. And when a fellow panelist tried to mock a guest's activism in a later episode, Maher raised his hand, not to interrupt, but to stop it. "Let's not turn real issues into punchlines," he said, eyes steady. That moment barely made the news. But in the control room, the lead producer quietly nodded. He learned, she whispered to herself. He actually learned. As for Denzel, he remained as he always had, working, mentoring, showing up where it mattered. He didn't need headlines. He didn't want praise. He just wanted the mirror to stay up a little longer. And for once, the world was still looking into it. It wasn't just a viral clip. It wasn't just a celebrity owning a host. It was something deeper. Something rarer. A man known for his silence stepped into the noise, not to shout, but to center it. And in doing so, Denzel Washington reminded an entire generation of one thing: truth doesn't need to be loud. It needs to be clear. In the years that followed, that moment lived on, not because of drama, but because of dignity. It showed up in classrooms, sermons, protests, boardrooms. It whispered its way into spaces where people usually talked over each other. People remembered how it felt to see someone calmly stand their ground, not for applause, but for principle. And when young artists, thinkers, and leaders were asked who inspired them to speak with conviction, they didn't always say Denzel's name. They didn't have to.